300 years before the day the galaxy begged for humanity's help, war had ended not with a treaty, but with a warning. Humanity had emerged from the devastating Orion conflict victorious, though victory was a word few humans used afterward. Entire worlds had burned, stars had been weaponized, and billions had died. The Galactic Council, terrified by what humans had become when pushed to their limits, gathered every major species and passed the Edict of Eternal Peace. Humanity was forbidden from maintaining a military, forbidden from developing offensive weapons, and forbidden from participating in interstellar conflicts of any kind. The official reason was preserving peace. The unofficial reason was fear. Every species in the galaxy remembered what humans had done during the Orion conflict. They remembered fleets that fought after losing command structures. They remembered soldiers who continued advancing despite impossible odds. They remembered civilians turning factories into war machines overnight. Most of all, they remembered Earth's final message during the conflict: if survival requires war, then war it shall be. For 3 centuries humanity obeyed. Their warships became research vessels. Their soldiers became engineers, doctors, explorers, and scientists. Human colonies spread peacefully across hundreds of systems. New generations grew up hearing stories of war the same way children once heard fairy tales. Humanity became famous for innovation, diplomacy, and trade. Alien civilizations slowly relaxed. The nightmares faded. The old veterans died. The galaxy convinced itself that humanity had changed. Then the Kharon arrived. Nobody knew where they came from. Their ships appeared beyond the galactic rim without warning. They communicated nothing. They negotiated nothing. They conquered everything. Entire fleets vanished within days. Advanced civilizations that had stood for thousands of years collapsed in weeks. The Kharon did not occupy planets. They harvested them. Worlds were stripped of resources, populations exterminated, and systems left as empty graveyards drifting through space. At first, the Galactic Council believed the threat could be contained. Then they lost 12 member worlds. Then 30. Then 80. The galaxy had known peace for centuries. Their ships were designed for defense, their commanders trained through simulations instead of combat, and their governments had forgotten how to think during wartime. Every strategy failed. Every counterattack ended in disaster. As system after system fell, panic spread faster than the invasion itself. Refugees flooded neighboring worlds. Economies collapsed. Governments fractured. For the first time in 300 years, extinction became a real possibility. The final breaking point came at the Battle of Neros Prime. The Council assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. Over 200,000 ships gathered around the fortress world. It was supposed to be the stand that stopped the Kharon advance. Instead, it became a massacre. Within 6 hours, the fleet ceased to exist. The few survivors returned carrying stories that sounded impossible. Kharon vessels adapted to every tactic almost instantly. They predicted formations before commanders issued orders. Their coordination bordered on supernatural. When news reached the council chambers, silence filled the room. For the first time, nobody had a plan. Then an elderly representative from a minor species stood and asked a question nobody wanted to hear. What about humanity? The room erupted immediately. Some called the idea madness. Others called it desperation. But desperation was winning. Within days, a delegation traveled to Earth. The journey ended in orbit above a planet unlike anything they expected. Earth was peaceful. Green continents stretched beneath white clouds. Massive orbital habitats rotated silently. There were no battle fleets, no defensive armadas, no signs of military activity. The delegation landed in Geneva, where humanity's planetary government welcomed them politely. The alien representatives explained the situation. They described the invasion, the losses, the collapse, the extinction approaching from the galactic frontier. When they finished, the human officials remained silent for several moments. Finally, the Secretary General spoke. "You are asking humanity to go to war." No one answered immediately. The words themselves felt forbidden. Yes, one delegate finally admitted. "The galaxy requires your assistance." The Secretary General looked around the room. 300 years ago, the galaxy decided humanity was too dangerous for war. Several delegates lowered their eyes. "We remember," one said quietly. "And now?" the Secretary asked. "Now we were wrong." The admission seemed to weigh heavily on every representative present. Humanity had been feared for centuries, judged for actions taken by ancestors long dead. Yet now those same civilizations had come begging for salvation. The Secretary General stood and approached the large window overlooking the city. "You should understand something. Humanity obeyed your ban. We dismantled our militaries. We pursued peace. But we never forgot." Several delegates exchanged confused glances. "Forgot what?" one asked. The Secretary turned toward them. "How to fight. Deep beneath Earth's surface, hidden beneath mountains. Oceans, deserts, and colonies spread across human space. Doors began opening for the first time in centuries. Vast facilities awakened from dormancy. Artificial intelligences activated archives sealed since the Orion conflict. Manufacturing complexes powered online. Across hundreds of worlds, encrypted signals spread. Most citizens never saw them. But those who received the messages understood immediately. Some were historians, some engineers, some scientists, some farmers, some teachers. Yet all shared one thing in common. Their families had preserved traditions dating back to humanity's military age. Humanity had obeyed the letter of the law. They had never maintained an active military. They had simply preserved knowledge. Within weeks, shipyards erupted with activity. Research stations transformed into production centers. Mining colonies doubled output. Civilian transports carried supplies between worlds non-stop. Alien observers watched in disbelief. Humanity moved with terrifying efficiency. No confusion. No hesitation. No political paralysis. Every citizen seemed to know exactly what was required. One council observer compared it to watching a sleeping giant open its eyes. Then the first human warship appeared. It emerged from a construction dock orbiting Mars. The vessel dwarfed anything the galaxy had built in centuries. Its dark hull stretched for kilometers. Weapon systems remained hidden beneath armored plating. There was no ceremony. No announcement. It simply departed for the frontier. Then another followed. then 10 more, then hundreds. Entire fleets materialized seemingly from nowhere. Alien governments struggled to comprehend the scale. Humanity had spent centuries building peaceful infrastructure. Now that infrastructure became the foundation of the largest military mobilization in galactic history. The Kharon reached the Arcturus corridor 2 months later expecting another easy conquest. Instead, they encountered Task Force Vanguard. 800 human vessels blocked the system entrance. The Kharon attacked immediately. For the first time since their arrival, they did not achieve victory. Human commanders adapted faster than their enemy. Human ships absorbed punishment that would destroy other fleets. Human pilots ignored tactical assumptions considered universal among other species. The battle lasted 17 hours. When it ended, the Kharon retreated. The galaxy was stunned. Retreat was something the Kharon had never done before. Across countless world, citizens watched recordings of the battle. They expected advanced weapons or secret technologies. Instead, what shocked them most was human behavior. Human crews fought while damaged. Human commanders improvised constantly. Human formations shifted unpredictably. They treated war not as mathematics but as controlled chaos. The Kharon's predictive systems struggled against opponents who refused to act logically. For the first time, the invaders faced an enemy they could not fully understand. As news spread, hope returned to the galaxy. But humanity knew better. One victory meant nothing. The Kharon were still advancing. Their numbers remained overwhelming. And somewhere beyond the galactic rim, the source of the invasion remained hidden. Humanity had entered the war. Now came the difficult part. Winning it. Far beyond the frontier, aboard a silent command vessel drifting between stars, Kharon leadership analyzed battle data from Arcturus. For the first time in centuries of conquest, their calculations produced uncertainty. Human tactical behavior generated contradictions. Predictions failed. Simulations collapsed. The species they had expected to eliminate quickly had become an anomaly. And anomalies were dangerous. Orders spread through the Kharon hierarchy immediately. Humanity was no longer classified as another civilization. Humanity was now classified as the primary threat. Across thousands of ships, fleets altered course. The invasion changed direction. The galaxy believed humanity had saved them. They did not yet realize something far more terrifying had happened. Humanity had just become the main target. As the Kharon fleets shifted their advance toward human space, panic swept through the Galactic Council once again, but this time for a different reason. The Council had expected humanity to slow the invasion, perhaps by a few years, maybe create an opportunity for diplomacy or evacuation. Nobody expected humanity to become the center of the war itself. Every major Kharon formation was now redirecting toward human-controlled territory. Entire sectors that had faced certain destruction suddenly found themselves ignored as the invaders focused on a single objective: destroy humanity. On Earth, however, there was no panic. There was only preparation. Human shipyards continued operating around the clock. Entire generations that had grown up in peace now volunteered for logistics, manufacturing, intelligence analysis, and emergency response programs. They were not soldiers. Most had never touched a weapon. Yet they understood something many alien civilizations had forgotten centuries earlier: war was never won by armies alone. It was won by societies. While fleets gathered along the frontier, human scientists worked on countermeasures. Engineers redesigned vessels after every engagement. Historians studied records from the Orion conflict searching for forgotten lessons. Humanity was adapting at a speed that astonished even its allies. The first major Kharon assault on human territory came at New Horizon, a colony world orbiting a blue giant star. More than 12,000 enemy vessels entered the system expecting another straightforward conquest. Instead, they found the system empty. No fleet. No defenses. No resistance. The Kharon advanced confidently toward the planet. Then the star itself erupted. Massive energy structures hidden within the system activated simultaneously, turning the star into a weapon. Waves of radiation and plasma engulfed the invasion force. Hundreds of ships vanished instantly. Thousands more suffered catastrophic damage. Before the survivors could reorganize, 3 human fleets emerged from concealed positions and attacked from multiple directions. The battle lasted less than 4 hours. Fewer than 20% of the Kharon force escaped. Across the galaxy, military analysts stared at the battle recordings in disbelief. The strategy was considered reckless, unpredictable, and absurdly dangerous. It was also devastatingly effective. Human commanders had willingly turned their own colony system into a battlefield because they understood something the Kharon did not. Territory could be rebuilt. Extinction could not. As the months passed, humanity continued forcing the invaders into situations no simulation could predict. They abandoned worlds to lure enemy fleets into traps. They sacrificed strategic positions to create larger victories elsewhere. They attacked supply routes that nobody knew existed. Every time the Kharon adapted to one tactic, humans introduced another. Yet despite the successes, the cost remained enormous. Human casualties climbed into the millions. Entire colonies were evacuated. Cities disappeared beneath orbital bombardments. For the first time in 300 years, humanity experienced the reality of war again. And still they refused to surrender. Then came the discovery that changed everything. During a battle near the Galactic Rim, a damaged Kharon vessel was captured mostly intact. Human intelligence teams spent weeks attempting to access its systems. When they finally succeeded, the information they uncovered shocked every government in the galaxy. The Kharon were not invading because they wanted territory. They were running. Beyond the rim existed something even they feared. Ancient records described an expanding phenomenon consuming entire regions of space. Civilizations vanished before it. Stars went dark. Planets disappeared. The Kharon had spent centuries retreating from it, harvesting resources from conquered worlds to sustain their migration. They were not the ultimate threat. They were refugees armed with an empire-sized fleet. When this revelation reached the Council, chaos erupted. Some leaders demanded negotiations immediately. Others insisted the Kharon could never be trusted. Humanity reviewed the data and reached a different conclusion entirely. If the records were accurate, then eventually both the galaxy and the Kharon would face the same enemy. Humanity requested direct contact with Kharon leadership. Everyone expected refusal. Instead, a response arrived within hours. A meeting was arranged in neutral space. The galaxy watched nervously as a single human vessel entered a system occupied by thousands of Kharon warships. Aboard the ship was Admiral Sarah Kane, commander of the Human Defense Coalition. She met the Kharon Supreme Strategist face to face. The encounter lasted 7 hours. Nobody knew what was said. No recordings were released. When Admiral Kane finally returned, she carried only a single message. The war ends today. Within 48 hours, hostilities ceased across the entire frontier. Human and Kharon fleets stood down simultaneously. The galaxy was stunned. Civilizations that had spent years fighting for survival could hardly believe it. Then Kane revealed the truth. Humanity had offered something no other species could provide: a solution. During 3 centuries of peace, human science had advanced far beyond what most governments realized. While other civilizations focused on stability, humanity had continued exploring impossible technologies. Among those projects was a prototype capable of creating controlled stellar corridors through deep space. In simple terms, humanity possessed a way to move entire populations across unimaginable distances. The Kharon no longer needed conquest to survive. They could escape the approaching threat without destroying the galaxy. Many council members protested immediately. They demanded punishment, justice, revenge. Humanity refused. Admiral Kane addressed the council directly. You can spend another century fighting a war that has already killed billions, or you can ensure those deaths are the last. Choose. Reluctantly, the council agreed. An unprecedented alliance formed. Human engineers worked alongside Kharon specialists. Former enemies became uneasy partners. Massive evacuation networks spread beyond the galactic rim. Entire Kharon populations began relocating toward uncharted regions of space. For the first time since their arrival, the invaders stopped advancing. They started rebuilding. Years later, historians would call it the greatest diplomatic achievement in galactic history. Yet among ordinary citizens, another story became far more popular. It was the story of how humanity returned to war after 300 years of peace and reminded the galaxy why they had once been feared. Not because they possessed the strongest ships. Not because they had the most powerful weapons. But because when every other civilization saw only 2 choices, victory or defeat, humans searched for a third. The Galactic Council eventually repealed the Edict of Eternal Peace. Humanity was free to maintain a military once more. Surprisingly, they chose not to create the giant war machine many expected. Instead, they kept a modest defense force and invested most resources into exploration, science, and reconstruction. When asked why, Admiral Kane gave an answer that became famous across thousands of worlds. The purpose of being strong is not to fight every battle. The purpose of being strong is making sure there's always another option. And so the galaxy entered a new era. Humanity was no longer feared as a sleeping giant or remembered only for ancient wars. They became something far more influential. They became proof that strength and restraint could exist together. That peace was valuable precisely because people were willing to defend it. And whenever young cadets at military academies studied the Kharon War, they always paused at the same lesson. The day the galaxy faced extinction, the species it had spent 3 centuries trying to restrain became the species that saved everyone. Humanity had been banned from war for 300 years. When they finally returned, they did not just win the conflict. They changed the meaning of victory itself.